The morning sun stretched across the farmland of Harvest's Edge Colony as Colin Hartwell stood on his wooden porch, holding a chipped coffee mug. Before him lay 200 acres of grain fields and vegetable plots, all demanding attention he could not give. The crops grew wild in some places and died in others. Weeds choked the irrigation channels. Fence posts leaned at dangerous angles. 3 years had passed since the shuttle accident. 3 years since Diane left for a simple supply run and never came back. The colonial authorities said the engine failure was quick. They said she did not suffer. Colin did not know if that made it better or worse. He had managed alone for those 3 years, but managing was not the same as succeeding. Half his harvest rotted last season because he could not bring it in fast enough. His vegetable garden produced a fraction of what it should. The livestock grew thin because he lacked time to maintain proper grazing rotation. Every day brought more work than hours to complete it. So he posted a job listing on the Colonial Network. The words were simple and direct. Seasonal farmhand needed. Manual labor. Room and board included. Experience preferred but will train the right person. Colin expected responses from young colonists seeking summer wages. Perhaps a drifter passing through the frontier territories. Maybe a retired spacer looking for quiet work. He received exactly one reply. The name told him everything and nothing at the same time. Kira Velshawn. A Zeltheri name, clearly. Colin had lived 46 years on 3 different colony worlds and never once met a Zeltheri doing farm work. Their species came from the low-gravity moons of the Andromeda sector. They were poets and scientists, musicians and philosophers. They built beautiful cities with impossible architecture and debated ethical questions humans had not even thought to ask yet. They were not farmers. Colin almost deleted the message. His finger hovered over the button. But desperation makes people reconsider foolish ideas, and he was nothing if not desperate. The message itself was polite and formal, written in better grammar than most humans managed. She expressed genuine interest in the position and asked when she might visit for an interview. Against every practical instinct, Colin sent coordinates and agreed to meet her. The transport shuttle arrived exactly on time 2 days later. Colin heard the engine hum from across the fields and walked toward the small landing pad near his barn. He wiped his calloused hands on his work pants, suddenly aware of the dirt under his fingernails and the sweat stains on his shirt. Then he felt foolish for caring. The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss. A figure emerged and Colin got his first look at Kira Velshawn. She stood about 5 feet 8 inches tall, slender in the way all Zeltheri seemed to be. Her skin had that characteristic opalescent quality, shifting between pale purple and pearl white as she moved through the sunlight. Her face was angular with high cheekbones and large amber-colored eyes. A slight ridge ran along her temples, marking her species as clearly as a flag. She wore practical clothing. Work pants, a simple shirt, sturdy boots. Nothing fancy or decorative. She carried a single small travel case. Then she took her first step down from the shuttle and Colin's breath caught. She limped. Not a small hesitation or minor hitch. This was a severe, compensating limp that spoke of significant damage to her right leg. That leg could not bear weight properly, forcing her to shift her entire balance with each step. Her face remained calm and neutral, but Colin could see the effort it cost her. Every doubt he had suppressed came flooding back. A Zeltheri. With a serious physical disability. Wanting to do farm work that broke the backs of healthy young humans. This was a mistake. Kira approached him with steady, uneven steps. She set down her case and extended her hand in the human custom. Mr. Hartwell? I am Kira Velshawn. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Her voice carried that musical quality typical of her species, but lower and rougher than he expected. She had spent time around humans, clearly. Her grip was firm when he shook her hand. Miss Velshawn, Colin said, trying to find diplomatic words. I appreciate you making the trip, but I need to be honest with you. This is hard physical labor. Dawn to dusk work during planting and harvest seasons. It requires strength and endurance. It is not suited for someone like me? Kira finished his sentence without any anger in her voice. A slight smile touched her lips. You are thinking that Zeltheri are too delicate for manual labor, and that someone with my obvious impairment could not possibly manage the work. Her directness surprised him. Well, yes. Both are fair assumptions based on available evidence, Kira said calmly. May I demonstrate something for you? Before Colin could respond, she walked toward a stack of supply crates near the barn entrance. Each crate weighed at least 40 pounds. Colin opened his mouth to protest, but Kira had already bent down, adjusted her stance to compensate for her leg and lifted one of the crates. Her damaged leg trembled slightly under the shifted weight distribution. Her jaw tightened. But she held the crate steady, carried it 10 feet across the packed dirt, and set it down with careful control. Then she straightened and walked back to face him. "I am not strong by human standards," Kira said. Her breathing was slightly elevated but controlled. "But I am capable of the work. I have learned to work within my limitations. I adapt quickly to new tasks. And I do not quit easily." She paused, and something vulnerable flickered in those amber eyes. "I need this position, Mr. Hartwell. I cannot offer you typical Zelthari skills. I am not a musician or a poet or a philosopher. But I can work hard. I do not complain. And I will not abandon you halfway through a season." Colin studied her face. Behind the calm exterior, he recognized something familiar. Determination born from necessity. Pride struggling against circumstance. The look of someone who had fallen far and was fighting to climb back up. He knew that look. He had seen it in his own mirror for 3 years. 1-week trial period, Colin heard himself say. "I have a guest cottage past the main house. It is small but functional. Kitchen, bathroom, bed. You will take meals with me in the main house. Work starts at dawn, ends at dusk with a break for lunch. If you can handle the work, we will discuss terms for the full season." Relief washed across Kira's features so clearly that Colin wondered what desperation had brought her here. What circumstances had reduced an educated Zelthari to seeking manual labor on a struggling farm at the edge of civilized space? "Thank you," Kira said quietly. "You will not regret this decision." "We will see about that," Colin replied, but not unkindly. "Come on. I will show you where you will be staying." He picked up her travel case before she could protest and led her along the dirt path toward the cottage. Behind him, he heard her uneven footsteps, the rhythm of her limp already becoming familiar. The sound seemed to fit somehow, as if the farm had been waiting for it. Colin had no idea if this would work. But he had tried everything else and nothing had succeeded. Maybe desperation was just another word for being willing to take a chance on something unexpected. Maybe this limping alien woman would surprise him. Or maybe she would be gone in 3 days and he would be back where he started, alone with too much work and too little time. Either way, at least he would know he tried something different. Colin woke Kira before dawn on her first morning, half expecting to find her cottage empty. Instead, she stood on the small porch already dressed for work, watching the sunrise paint the fields in shades of gold and orange. She turned when she heard his footsteps and simply nodded. He started her on what he considered light tasks. Feed the chickens. Collect eggs from the henhouse. Weed the vegetable garden near the main house. Simple jobs that required more patience than strength. Jobs he expected would take her most of the morning, giving him time to handle the heavier work alone. By mid-morning, Colin returned from checking the irrigation pumps to find all 3 tasks completed. The chickens had fresh feed and water. 2 baskets of eggs sat clean and sorted on the kitchen counter. The vegetable garden looked better than it had in months, with neat rows and carefully pulled weeds stacked for composting. Kira sat on the garden fence, her damaged leg extended carefully, drinking water from a canteen. Sweat dampened her shirt, but her expression showed satisfaction rather than exhaustion. "How did you finish so fast?" Colin asked, genuinely surprised. Kira gestured toward the henhouse. "I built a simple ramp system using spare boards from your shed. It allows me to enter without putting weight on uneven ground." The chickens did not seem to mind. She pointed at the garden. "For weeding, I created a seated position that distributes my weight properly. It is slower than standing and bending, but more efficient for me than constantly rising and falling." Colin examined her work more closely. The ramp was crude but functional, built with an engineer's understanding of angles and weight distribution. The weeding showed systematic thinking, working in sections rather than random patches. "You have done this kind of work before?" he said. "No," Kira admitted. "But I understand principles of mechanics and biology. The application is simply a matter of observation and adaptation." Over the following days, Colin assigned progressively more challenging tasks. Kira approached each one with the same methodical problem-solving. She could not carry heavy loads long distances, so she built a simple cart that allowed her to pull weight instead of bearing it. She struggled with ladder work, so she designed pole-mounted tools for pruning that eliminated the need to climb. On the 4th day, Colin was repairing a fence post when the hammer slipped and smashed into his left hand. Pain exploded through his fingers. He dropped the tool, cursing, clutching his hand as blood welled from a deep gash across his palm. Kira appeared seemingly from nowhere. "Let me see it," she said calmly. It is fine, Colin growled through gritted teeth. Just need to wrap it. Let me see it, Kira repeated, firmer this time. Colin reluctantly extended his hand. Blood dripped steadily from the wound. Kira examined it with careful attention, her fingers gentle but thorough. She pressed around the edges, watching his reaction. The cut is deep but clean, she said. No debris inside. You are fortunate you did not damage the tendons. She pulled a small kit from her work bag that Colin had not known she carried. Inside were medical supplies more sophisticated than the basic first aid kit in his house. Hold still, Kira instructed. She cleaned the wound with practiced efficiency, using antiseptic that stung but clearly knew what it was doing. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. She applied a coagulant gel that stopped the bleeding almost immediately, then sealed the wound with surgical tape designed for field injuries. You will need to keep it clean and dry for 3 days, Kira said, wrapping his hand with precise layers of bandage. Change the dressing each morning. If you see any discoloration or feel increasing pain, tell me immediately. Colin stared at his neatly bandaged hand. Where did you learn to do that? Kira's expression became guarded. I had medical training as part of my xenobotany degree. Field researchers need to treat injuries when far from proper facilities. She began packing up her kit. Your farm has more serious problems than your hand, however. What do you mean? Kira stood and walked to the edge of the nearest grain field. She knelt, scooped up a handful of soil and let it run through her fingers. Your soil is depleted. The grain grows poorly not because of lack of water or sunlight, but because it lacks essential minerals. Specifically, your nitrogen levels are extremely low. So are your phosphorus and potassium levels. Colin joined her, looking at the soil that seemed identical to him as it had always seemed. How can you tell? The color and texture, Kira explained. But more importantly, look at your plants. She pointed at the nearest stalks. See how the lower leaves are yellowing? That indicates nitrogen deficiency. The stunted growth and weak stems suggest phosphorus problems. And the leaf edges showing brown spots tell me potassium is also insufficient. She was right. Colin had noticed his crops performing poorly but had attributed it to lack of maintenance, not soil chemistry. What can I do about it? You need mineral amendments, Kira said. There are several options. Chemical fertilizers work quickly but can damage soil structure over time. Organic amendments take longer but improve overall soil health. Given your situation, I would recommend a hybrid approach. She began drawing in the dirt with a stick, sketching out application patterns and timing schedules. Colin watched her work, his understanding of this alien woman shifting with each passing moment. She was not simply educated. She was an expert in her field, speaking with the confidence of someone who had spent years studying these exact problems. Why are you here? The question left his mouth before he could stop it. You clearly have advanced degrees and specialized knowledge. You could work anywhere in the galaxy. Why are you on my farm asking for manual labor wages? Kira's hand stopped moving. For a long moment she did not respond. Then she set down the stick and stood, brushing dirt from her pants. Because everywhere else I applied they saw this, she gestured at her damaged leg, and decided I was not worth the risk. You are the first person who gave me a chance to prove what I can actually do instead of what I appear to be. The honesty in her voice made Colin feel ashamed of his initial doubts. Well, he said gruffly, I am glad I did. You have already taught me more about my own farm in 4 days than I learned in 3 years. A small smile crossed Kira's face. Then perhaps we can consider my trial period successful? On one condition, Colin said. You stop calling yourself a farmhand. If we are going to work together properly, you need to be honest about what you know. I need a partner who can help me fix this place, not just someone to collect eggs. Kira looked surprised, then pleased. I can accept those terms. That evening, they sat at Colin's kitchen table with soil samples and charts spread between them. Kira outlined a comprehensive improvement plan while Colin took notes and asked questions. For the first time since Diane's death, the farmhouse felt alive with purpose and possibility. Outside, the fields waited in darkness, struggling and depleted. But inside, 2 unlikely partners began planning how to bring them back to life. 3 weeks after Kira arrived, Colin's farm showed visible transformation. The grain fields grew stronger with proper mineral amendments. The vegetable garden produced twice its normal yield. Even the livestock looked healthier, grazing in rotations Kira had designed based on soil recovery principles. Neighbors who drove past began slowing down to look, clearly wondering what had changed. Colin knew what had changed. Kira worked from dawn until dusk without complaint, her limp never slowing her problem-solving mind. She had become essential to every aspect of the farm operation. More than that, she had become someone Colin looked forward to seeing each morning, someone whose quiet company made meals less lonely and work less burdensome. When the invitation arrived for the quarterly farming community gathering, Colin's first instinct was to throw it away. He had attended these events before Diane's death, back when she had enjoyed the social aspects. After she died, he went twice out of obligation before stopping entirely. The forced cheerfulness, the pitying looks, the awkward condolences, he wanted none of it. But Kira found the invitation on his kitchen counter and asked about it. "It is just a community gathering," Colin said dismissively. "Farmers getting together to complain about weather and equipment prices. Nothing important." "It sounds important," Kira said quietly. "Community connection matters, especially in isolated settlements. You should attend." "I don't want to go alone." "Then don't go alone." Kira met his eyes. "I will accompany you if you wish." Colin hesitated. Bringing Kira meant exposing her to the judgment and gossip of people who had known him for years. It meant watching their reactions to an alien woman working his farm. But the alternative was refusing to go at all, and something in Kira's expression suggested she understood isolation better than most. "All right," he agreed. "We'll go together." The gathering took place at the community hall, a simple structure at the center of the farming district. Dozens of families filled the space with conversation and laughter. Long tables held food contributions from each farm. Children ran between adults while farmers discussed crop yields and shared advice. Colin and Kira's entrance did not go unnoticed. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. Eyes tracked Kira's limping progress across the room with undisguised curiosity and in some cases poorly concealed distaste. Margaret Chin approached first, an older woman whose family had farmed Harvest's Edge for 2 generations. "Colin, good to see you." Her eyes flicked to Kira with careful politeness. "And you've brought a guest." "This is Kira Velshan," Colin said. "She's been working my farm." "Kira, this is Margaret Chin. She runs the grain cooperative." "A pleasure to meet you," Kira said, extending her hand. Margaret shook it briefly. "A Zelthari farmhand. That's unusual." "I find the work rewarding," Kira replied evenly. Other farmers approached with similar curiosity, asking polite but pointed questions. Where was she from? How long did she plan to stay? Had she done agricultural work before? Kira answered each question with calm dignity, never defensive but never apologizing for her presence either. Colin watched her handle the attention with growing respect. She smiled when appropriate, maintained eye contact, and spoke with quiet confidence about soil chemistry and crop rotation in ways that clearly surprised several farmers who had assumed she knew nothing about their profession. Then Thomas Brennan arrived. Thomas farmed the property adjacent to Colin's, a large operation passed down through his family. He was loud, opinionated, and generally unpleasant. He had never liked Colin much, and the feeling was entirely mutual. Thomas pushed through the small group around Colin and Kira, his face already flushed from drinking. "Well, look at this," he said too loudly. Colin finally got himself some help. "Though I gotta say, you couldn't find something more suitable?" "Thomas," Margaret said warningly. "What?" "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." Thomas gestured at Kira with his drink. "No offense, but you don't exactly look like you can handle real farm work. What with that leg and all. Must slow you down something awful." The conversations around them died. Everyone watched to see how this would unfold. Kira's expression remained neutral. "I manage adequately." "Adequately?" Thomas repeated mockingly. "That's a nice way of putting it. Colin, you running some kind of charity operation now? Taking in crippled aliens out of the goodness of your heart?" Something hot and angry flared in Colin's chest. "That's enough, Thomas." "I'm just being honest," Thomas continued, warming to his subject. "These aliens, they come to our colonies, take jobs from real workers, and then expect us to accommodate their problems. That's not how farming works. Farming requires real strength, real capability. Not whatever." "I said that's enough." Colin stepped forward, his voice cutting through Thomas's rant like a blade. "Kira has done more for my farm in 3 weeks than you've done for this community in 3 years. She's twice the farmer you'll ever be and 10 times the person." Thomas's face darkened. "You defending this thing? Look at it, Colin. It can barely walk. What use is?" Colin didn't plan to grab Thomas's shirt. His hands simply moved, bunching the fabric and pulling the larger man close enough to smell the alcohol on his breath. "Her name is Kira. She is not a thing. And if you say one more word about her, I'll throw you out of this hall myself." The room went completely silent. Someone gasped. Colin could feel every eye on him, but he didn't care. All he cared about was the ugly sneer on Thomas's face and the sudden fierce protectiveness burning in his chest. Thomas tried to pull away, but Colin's grip held firm. For a moment, violence hung in the air between them. Then Margaret Chen's voice broke through. "Thomas, you're drunk. Go home. Now." Thomas jerked free from Colin's grasp, stumbling back a step. "You're all crazy," he muttered. "Defending aliens over your own kind. You deserve each other." He turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The tension in the room slowly dissolved. Conversations resumed, though more quietly. Several farmers approached Colin to apologize for Thomas's behavior or to express interest in Kira's soil management techniques. But Colin barely registered any of it. He turned to Kira, suddenly afraid she would be angry or embarrassed. Instead, her amber eyes held something else. Something warm and surprised and grateful. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "Yes," Colin replied. "I did." They left the gathering soon after, the ride back to the farm quiet but not uncomfortable. The truck rumbled over rough roads while stars emerged in the darkening sky above. As they approached the farmhouse, Kira finally spoke. "Thank you. For what you said. For defending me." Colin parked the truck and turned off the engine. For a long moment, neither of them moved. "Can I ask you something?" Colin said. "How did you get injured?" "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but—" Kira was quiet for so long that Colin thought she wouldn't answer. Then she began to speak, her voice steady but carrying old pain. "I was a xenobotanist on my homeworld," she said. "A researcher studying food production sustainability. Our government was implementing agricultural policies that I knew would cause long-term environmental damage. I published papers. I spoke publicly. I challenged officials." She paused. "They did not appreciate being challenged." "They hurt you," Colin said, understanding. "They arrested me. Charged me with sedition. During interrogation they damaged my leg deliberately. To teach me the cost of speaking against authority." Kira's hands tightened in her lap. "A sympathetic guard helped me escape. I fled to human space because your species has a reputation for valuing individual rights over governmental convenience. I sought asylum but no one would hire me. My credentials meant nothing compared to my visible damage." Colin felt rage on her behalf, but also recognition. "I blamed myself for Diane's death," he heard himself say. "My wife. She took a supply run because I asked her to. If I had gone myself she would still be alive. I know that's not logical, but I can't stop thinking it." "Guilt is rarely logical," Kira said gently. "We carry it anyway." They sat in the dark truck, two damaged people sharing wounds they usually kept hidden. Outside, the farm stretched around them, imperfect and struggling but somehow beginning to heal. Just like them. The storm warnings came during breakfast, crackling through Colin's old weather radio with increasing urgency. Harvest's Edge was entering its violent storm season, and meteorologists tracked a massive system bearing down on the farming district. Wind speeds predicted at 90 kilometers per hour. Heavy rain. Possible hail. Expected duration, 12 to 18 hours. Colin set down his coffee and looked at Kira across the table. "We have maybe 3 hours before it hits. We need to secure everything." They worked with desperate efficiency. Colin boarded up the greenhouse windows while Kira reinforced the chicken coop with additional supports. They moved tools and equipment into the barn, secured loose items that could become dangerous projectiles, and checked every fence line for weak points. The livestock sensed the coming storm, growing restless and agitated in their pens. The sky darkened to an ugly green-gray color. Wind began whipping across the fields, bending the grain stalks flat. The first raindrops hit like thrown pebbles, hard and cold. "We need to get the animals into the barn," Colin shouted over the rising wind. "The outer pens won't hold in this." They started with the chickens, herding the panicked birds into covered crates and carrying them to safety. Then the goats, stubborn and frightened, bleating their protest at being moved. Kira's limp grew more pronounced as exhaustion set in, but she never slowed down. The rain began in earnest as they reached the cattle pen. 8 head of cattle, each weighing several hundred kilograms, milled nervously as lightning split the darkening sky. Thunder followed immediately, close enough to feel in their chests. "We guide them one at a time," Colin yelled. "Don't let them panic or they'll scatter." But the cattle were already panicking. A lightning strike hit somewhere beyond the fields, the crack of thunder simultaneous and deafening. The lead cow bolted, crashing against the pen fence. Two others followed, their weight bending the metal posts. "The fence is breaking," Kira shouted. Colin saw it happening in slow motion. The corner post gave way completely. 3 cattle burst through the gap, running blindly into the storm. If they scattered across the open fields, finding them would be nearly impossible. Worse, they could injure themselves or destroy crops. "I'll go after them," Colin said. "You get the others into the barn." "No," Kira grabbed his arm. "We go together. The remaining cattle will follow if we lead with feed. We can circle back for the others." She was right. They quickly distributed grain in the barn, creating a trail the remaining cattle could follow. The animals went willingly, desperate for shelter. Once inside, Colin secured the barn doors. "Now the others," he said. They ran into the full fury of the storm. Rain hammered down in sheets, making it nearly impossible to see more than a few meters. Wind howled across the fields, strong enough to stagger them. Mud sucked at their boots with every step. Colin spotted the first cow near the irrigation ditch, standing confused and frightened. He approached slowly, speaking calm words that the wind tore away. The animal let him clip a lead rope to its collar, too scared to resist. He handed the rope to Kira and continued searching. The second cow had wedged itself against the equipment shed, trembling but unharmed. Colin coaxed it out and started leading it back toward the barn. Kira struggled with the first cow, her damaged leg sinking into mud, but she kept moving forward. They were halfway to the barn when Colin heard Kira scream. He spun around. The cow she was leading had panicked at another lightning strike and jerked sideways violently. Kira fell hard, still holding the rope. The cow dragged her through the mud for several meters before she managed to release her grip. Colin secured his own cow to the shed and ran back. Kira lay in the mud, clutching her damaged leg. Even through the rain he could see pain twisting her face. "Can you stand?" he shouted. "I don't know," Kira gasped. Colin helped her up. She managed to put weight on her good leg, but her damaged leg barely functioned. She had re-injured it badly. "Get to the house," Colin ordered. "I'll finish with the cattle." "The third cow is still out there," Kira said through gritted teeth. "I'll find it. You need to get inside." Kira's amber eyes met his with fierce determination. "We finished together." There was no time to argue. Colin supported most of her weight as they moved. The cow she had been leading stood nearby, too exhausted to run. Colin secured it and they half-walked, half-dragged it to the barn. Then they went back for the third cow. They found it near the northern fence line, bleeding from a cut on its flank where it had run into barbed wire. It took both of them to calm the animal enough to lead it back. By the time they secured it in the barn, they were both soaked through, covered in mud, and barely able to stand. A piece of the barn roof tore away with a shriek of metal. Rain poured through the gap. "The house," Colin said. "Now." They stumbled across the yard, the storm beating at them with physical force. Colin's shoulder hit the door frame as they entered, sending pain shooting down his arm. Inside they collapsed on the floor, water pooling around them. For several minutes neither spoke. They simply breathed, listening to the storm rage outside. Wind rattled the windows. Rain drummed against the roof like countless fingers. Finally, Colin stood and examined his shoulder. Dislocated, most likely. He had done it before and recognized the sensation. He looked at Kira, who sat with her back against the wall, her damaged leg extended carefully. "Let me see your leg," he said. "Your shoulder first," Kira replied. They treated each other's injuries with the medical supplies from Kira's kit. Colin gritted his teeth as Kira examined his shoulder, then counted to 3 and popped it back into place. The pain was intense but brief. He wrapped it with support bandaging while she watched. Then he looked at Kira's leg. The old injury had been aggravated severely. Swelling already darkened the tissue. She would be off that leg for days, possibly weeks. "I'm sorry," Kira said quietly. "I slowed us down. Made everything harder." "You saved those cattle," Colin replied firmly. "Without your plan we would have lost all of them. Without your refusal to quit, we never would have finished. I still failed you." "No." Colin sat beside her, his own exhaustion making him bold. "You never fail me, Kira. Not once since you arrived. You're the strongest person I've ever met." Kira looked at him with surprise. "I am broken. Physically damaged. Weak." "You survived torture," Colin said. "You escaped imprisonment. You fled across space to a species you didn't know, with no guarantee of safety or acceptance. You showed up at my farm knowing I would doubt you, and you proved yourself anyway. You worked through pain every single day without complaint." He paused. "That's not weakness. That's courage I can't even imagine." Tears gathered in Kira's amber eyes. I have never told anyone the full truth about what they did to me. Why I can never go home. You don't have to tell me, Colin said gently. I want to, Kira said. Outside the storm raged on. Inside, in the quiet safety of the farmhouse, Kira told Colin everything. About the research that threatened powerful interests. About the arrest and interrogation. About the deliberate, methodical damage to her leg, designed to break her spirit without killing her. About the escape that cost her everything she had known. When she finished, Colin told her about Diane. About the guilt that haunted him. About the loneliness that made every day feel hollow. About how afraid he was to care about anyone again because losing them would destroy what little remained of him. They sat together as the storm slowly passed, two wounded people finding unexpected comfort in shared pain. And somewhere in those hours something shifted between them. Something that had been growing for weeks but neither had acknowledged. When dawn finally came, gray and exhausted, they were still sitting together. The farm outside was damaged but intact. The livestock were safe. And two people who had been alone were alone no longer. 2 months after the storm, Colin's farm looked like a different place entirely. The grain fields stood tall and healthy, their heads heavy with developing seed. The vegetable garden produced more than Colin could sell locally, requiring him to establish contracts with regional distributors. The livestock thrived on Kira's carefully managed grazing rotation. Neighbors who had once questioned his judgment now asked for advice on soil management and crop rotation. The transformation was undeniable. The farm flourished in ways Colin had never managed alone, not even when Diane was alive. But the farm's success was not what kept Colin awake at night. Kira had recovered from her re-injury, though she now used a cane for additional support on difficult days. She moved through the farm with quiet efficiency, her presence as essential to daily operations as sunlight or rain. She had moved beyond being just a worker. She was his partner in every meaningful sense. And somewhere along the way, Colin had fallen in love with her. He did not know exactly when it happened. Maybe it was watching her patiently teach him about soil chemistry. Maybe it was the way she spoke to the animals with gentle respect. Maybe it was the evening conversations over dinner that stretched long into the night, discussing everything from farming techniques to philosophy to the strange beauty of alien sunsets. Or maybe it was simply the way she made the farmhouse feel like a home again instead of a monument to loss. But with love came guilt. Diane had been dead only 3 years. Sometimes Colin caught himself laughing at something Kira said and felt immediate shame, as if joy betrayed Diane's memory. He would lie awake remembering his wife's face, wondering if she would forgive him for moving forward, wondering if he even deserved to move forward. Kira seemed to sense his internal struggle, though she never mentioned it. She maintained careful boundaries, never assuming intimacy beyond their working partnership and friendship. She was unfailingly kind but never presumptuous. Then one evening, Kira asked to speak with him after dinner. They sat on the porch as the sun set, painting the fields in shades of amber and gold. Kira held a cup of tea in both hands, her expression serious. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. I have been saving my wages since I arrived. I now have enough to establish myself elsewhere. There is a research position available on New Hebrides colony. They are willing to overlook my injury in exchange for my expertise. Colin's chest tightened painfully. You're leaving? I think it might be time, Kira said, not meeting his eyes. You no longer need me the way you did. The farm is stable. You could hire local help now. People see what you have accomplished and want to be part of it. What if I don't want local help? The words came out harsher than Colin intended. What if I want you to stay? Kira finally looked at him, and he saw pain in her amber eyes. Colin, you have been extraordinarily kind to me. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You defended me. You saw my value when others saw only my limitations. I am grateful beyond words. But, Colin prompted. But I cannot stay here forever as your employee, Kira said softly. It is not enough anymore. And I cannot ask for more than that. It would not be fair to you. Colin's heart pounded. What if I want to give you more? Kira shook her head. You are still grieving your wife. You feel obligated to me because I helped your farm. Those are not good foundations for anything beyond what we already have. You think I want you to stay out of obligation? Colin stood, frustration and fear making him speak more boldly than usual. Kira, I advertised for a farmhand. Someone to help with manual labor for a season. That was all I expected or wanted. I know, Kira said. But that is not what I got, Colin continued. I got someone who taught me to see my farm in completely new ways. Someone who challenged me to be better at my work and my life. Someone who makes me laugh and makes me think and makes this empty house feel alive again. He paused, forcing himself to say the terrifying truth. I got someone I fell in love with. Kira's teacup trembled in her hands. Colin, you cannot. I love you, Colin said simply. I do not know when it happened. Maybe it was gradual. Maybe it was all at once during the storm when I realized I would rather face danger with you than safety without you. But it is real. And it has nothing to do with obligation or gratitude. Tears spilled down Kira's face, but she shook her head. You deserve someone whole. Someone without a damaged body and a dangerous past. Someone who can give you children if you want them. Someone whose government is not still looking for her. Someone who... Stop, Colin interrupted. Just stop. Do you think I care about any of that? You should care, Kira said desperately. My body is broken. I will never move without pain. I will never be as capable as someone healthy. And my past could catch up to me. The government on my homeworld does not forget. If they find me, they could make trouble for you. You could lose everything. Colin knelt in front of her, taking the teacup from her shaking hands and setting it aside. He took her hands in his, feeling how small and delicate they were. Listen to me, he said firmly. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm not asking for someone who can outwork everyone else or who has no complicated history. I'm asking for you. The person who sees problems and solves them. The person who refuses to quit even when everything hurts. The person who sat with me during a storm and shared her deepest wounds without shame. That is who I want. That is who I love. What about your wife? Kira whispered. What about Diane? Colin took a shaky breath. Diane is gone. I will always love her memory. I will always carry some guilt about her death. But she is not coming back. And I hope she would want me to be happy. She would not want me to spend the rest of my life alone out of loyalty to her ghost. You truly want this? Kira asked. You want me to stay? Not as your employee but as my partner, Colin finished. In every sense of the word. If you will have me. Kira looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for doubt or deception. She found only honesty and hope and love that made her heart ache. I love you too, she said finally. I have for weeks. I was terrified to say it because I thought you could never feel the same way. I thought I was being foolish, imagining something that could never exist between us. Colin smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. Then we have both been fools together. What do we do now? Kira asked. Now. Colin stood and pulled her gently to her feet, careful of her leg. Now we stop running from what we feel. We face it honestly. We build something together, not just a farm but a life. It will not be easy, Kira warned. Interspecies relationships face prejudice. Legal complications. Biological incompatibilities. When has anything worthwhile ever been easy? Colin replied. We will figure it out. Together. Kira leaned against him, and Colin wrapped his arms around her carefully. They stood on the porch as darkness fell, holding each other while the farm settled into evening quiet around them. 6 months later, the farm had expanded again. Colin and Kira filed official partnership papers, making their business relationship legal and formal. Kira applied for permanent residency with Colin sponsoring her application. The local community, seeing their success and genuine happiness, gradually accepted their unusual relationship. They planted new fields using innovative techniques that combined human practical experience with Zelthari scientific knowledge. They hosted educational workshops for other farmers, sharing what they had learned. They built a life together, not perfect but real and honest and full of purpose. On the anniversary of Kira's arrival, Colin placed flowers on Diane's memorial stone as he did every year. But this time Kira stood beside him, her hand in his. Thank you, Colin said quietly, not sure if he was speaking to Diane or to fate or to the universe itself. Thank you for teaching me that moving forward is not betrayal. That love can exist in different forms. That I can honor the past while building a future. Kira squeezed his hand gently. They turned together and walked back toward the farmhouse, their uneven footsteps creating a rhythm that somehow sounded exactly right. Colin had advertised for a farmhand and found so much more. He had found purpose and partnership and a second chance at happiness. He had found someone who saw his grief and did not run from it. Someone who brought her own scars and said, this is who I am, take it or leave it. He chose to take it. Every day he chose it. And every day Kira chose him back. Together, they proved that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never knew to ask for. The ones that arrive limping and uncertain but stay and grow and become irreplaceable. The farm thrived. But more importantly, so did they.